Colin.
Yes?
He was stating that, well, and a couple crop circle crops as we came to, they said the more elaborate ones were not man-made and the other ones were man-made. And now
Yeah.
he's switched on that, and he said now the ones that are not elaborate are the non-man-made, and the ones the more elaborate they were more man-made.
Yeah.
And he stated that, and I was flabbergasted by that.
Yes. Well, people can say all sorts of things, but what is it based on?
Right.
You know, what is it based on? He doesn't know, actually.
Oh.
And it's, when you work with crop circles, because you work in a field that is not rational. It's not a rational world, the world of crop circles, you know? I mean, you saw the presentation. It's not the normal world. And therefore, you really need to use your reason much more than when you can't get away with it. You have to be very, very disciplined. And you have to learn the difference between making an assumption or seeing something true, you know? And making an assumption is not the truth. And therefore, there's a lot of assumptions that are made. And people can make, they build scenarios, they build, you know, all sorts of things. At the end of the day, we have to stick to facts. You know, and the facts are that there are lots of formations, they are complex, and they relate to symbol. If you don't know anything about symbols, it will mean nothing to you. He doesn't have any idea about symbols, so it means nothing to him. It doesn't speak to him. You have to, one fact with this awful man-made versus non-man-made is such a pain, and it is a bit of a waste of time. And when you see the magnitude of the phenomenon, you know, what are we doing? What are we doing? We need to know what it means and start to learn and respond and apply the teaching and really expand our consciousness. And we get stuck in this. But there is a way of gauging whether it's man-made or not. You see, we can analyze the plants, and that tells us if it's been so on and so forth. We can't analyze all the formation. That is one of the problems. There's just too many. You know, we can do 3 or 4 a year. There's 70 a year. You know, you can't actually, it takes 2 or 3 days to sample a formation. Now that gives you a clue. It takes 3 or 4 days to sample a formation. How come it can be done in an hour of darkness? You see? So there are formations that are man-made every summer, and they're man-made for television, and they're man-made for the press, and they're man-made. Well, this year we had, sometimes there's more. Last year there was 5 or 6. The History Channel had done one. This year National Geographic did one. And television from the Japanese television, and they reproduced a cartoon that they have there, a little cat face. Now, when something like that is done by hand, the people who are employed are paid. They're lodged. The field is rented. So you pay the farmer, because it's a criminal offense to go and trash crops. You know, it's vandalism. It's a felony, so you're not allowed to do that. So when it's done by hand, it's arranged 6 months in advance. The farmer is paid, so he leaves them alone. Usually, the 2 formation we had this summer, and it's the case in very, very often when it's man-made, they have to bring cranes in. You know, these big, tall cranes. So they bring these great, big, tall cranes because you have to have a vantage point. We can't even see the formation on the ground. How can you do a design if you can't see anything? It's not possible. That's not logical. You see, you need a crane. And they have big spotlights. So at night, if they work at night to speed up the thing, you can see them for miles because it reflects. Because in England, it's not like Arizona. There's clouds all the time, and there's dampness. And if you have a field that's lit, you'll see it 4 or 5 miles away because it reflects on the cloud formation. And we did, there's something there, we go, and there they are, you see? So you can't hide so easily. So all these considerations seems to be not considered by these people who flap their lips about the man-made theory. It's not even logical. You know, that's what I was saying to the farmer. One farmer this morning was very angry because the very long formation, 885 feet, which took 90% of his field, you know, is massive. He comes in, I'm so fed up, these gangs of people with blankets. I said, what gangs? Well, have you ever seen them on your farm? No. I've never seen them, but I know they're coming. Well, how do you know they're coming? Because this is here. But I said to him, have you considered that that little formation down the road, which was 90 feet across, took a week to do in daylight with cranes and all the rest of it, and they were paid and everything over there. How come this one, which is 885 feet, which was made when in the pouring rain and the mist, could be done like that overnight? Is it logical? Well, no, it's not really logical, you know, when you start thinking about it. But people just come out with this, it goes on television. You think when you hear that, there's years of research, he's got a solid basis. Not at all. You know, he sees a photograph, oh, I don't like this one. No, this one, I don't like it. You know, so it's based on I don't like. See, 90% of the time.
Well,
come closer, come closer.
This brings up the suppression of truth on this planet. Like you were saying that there's the serpent symbol, which is a good symbol. A lot of the basic religions turn these symbols like the wolf.
Yeah.
They demonize these symbols.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the real truth of it has been turned around 180
Yes,
degrees.
yeah.
Now it seems to me, you know, this stuff about hoaxes maybe is part of the same agenda and to discredit the actual value of the information that's coming
Yes,
through.
yes.
Because this is obviously hyperspace language.
Yes.
You know, some of it seems very, very celestial to me.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you, since you're there and you're living there, and I have not been there yet, I have no knowledge of, obviously there is a resistance in the press and in, you know, the powers that be to discredit these from being real?
Well, I think that in the world that we live in, which is actually based on a mechanistic understanding of how life is, you know, that there's no such thing as consciousness that could interact in the greater world and so on. And people will believe much more readily that it's men with planks than that the universe is talking. You know, I go on radio and I say, well, the universe is talking, and they go, yeah, this is a real nutcase here. Because that's not easy to accept if you don't have access to your intuitive, and if you're not, you know, on a bit of a spiritual path. That's why I said people who are on a spiritual path can really connect with that, because they sense the energy, they recognize very quickly. If you're in your, I mean, I had the same when I saw the balls of light. I'm thinking a car is up there, you know, all this sort of logical thing comes in, then I say, no, the bushes are below the you know. So the first reaction is, it's got to be a very down-to-earth explanation. And that's why it's so easy for people to believe, to assume it's a man-made. But I say that if you're going to say something is man-made, you should really know that it is, not just push an assumption, because other people imagine you've got a really good reason, and half the time the researchers who say that don't have a good reason. But I just want to say something that I'll come back to. This summer, I don't know if you remember the great big debunk of Doug and Dave in 1991. Yeah. Now, this summer I met, someone came to my tour, one of my tours, who it turns out was the son of a scientist who was the main advisors to the government in the 1980s. And that's why he came to my tour, because his father had said to him, it's not man-made. The government had sent him to Wiltshire and said, we want to know what's going on there. Is that man-made or not? And he came back to the government and he said, it cannot be man-made. And immediately, Doug and Dave appeared on the scene. You see? Now, Doug and Dave, now the crop circles were not known. I bet you none of you knew about crop circles in 1991. Nobody in the world knew about, well, you did know about it? Yeah. But the proportion of the population who knew about that was minute. Now, Doug and Dave was shown on television in every country of the world. I went to Japan, and people told me, oh, Doug and Dave, I saw that on television. China saw it, Alaska saw it, Canada, every country in the world. This was on the par with landing on the moon, with the death of President Kennedy, with the death of Princess Diana, which was shown worldwide. And then next to that, you have Doug and Dave faking a little formation with planks. It takes power to do that. You and I could never get anything like that on television, worldwide, all at once. And I was told that in America, it was on every channel as well. So you couldn't get away from it. You know, what is Doug and Dave again? I don't want to see this, you know. You could not escape it. And it had a devastating effect.
publishing company, they brought this up last year's conference, that broke that. They did some background on the company, and it's owned by MI6.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Broke the story.
George Wingfield, one of the researchers, when it was organized by Today's newspaper. It's a newspaper called Today. The Today newspaper no longer exists. It was only, you know, it was a new newspaper, and it didn't last very long. And the journalist that went there was not a journalist who worked there. They didn't know who he was. He suddenly appeared. I've got a good idea. We're going to do that through your newspaper. Doug and Dave are two men in their 70s. In 1991, they were in their 70s. They were paid £10,000. There was a phone number that Today's newspaper gave to George Wingfield. George Wingfield rang this phone number, and it traced it to MI6, which is the equivalent in England to the CIA. Yeah, the CIA, the part of the MI6 is the part of disinformation.
That's what I was meant. Thank
Yeah.
you. That exactly.
So that was in 1991. So it actually killed the phenomenon before it had a chance to take root.
Yeah.
And in the mind of most people in the world, all they can think about is Doug and Dave. It had such a strong impact. So now let me see if I have any more to say. Now in 1991 again, when so why are researchers falling in that trap? You know, a lot of people go there for all sorts of reasons. When I first started, I asked a Tao master, a Chinese Tao master, master of energy, where does the crop circle come from? And he said, from the Tao. And it's a very pure energy, but we're not pure. We're not pure. When we go under that, you know, it's like you plug yourself onto a big electrical pylon. You plug yourself in that, you are infused with a hugely powerful energy. Whatever is inside you will be enhanced. Whatever it is. You go there with ego, your ego will blow like a balloon. And it does. And we have a lot of problem with that. You have to know why you go into crop circles. You're plugging yourself into a cosmic ray. What is it going to feed in me? You know? Is it going to feed my understanding? If you want to go to receive understanding, it will feed your understanding. If you want to go, I heard someone, a researcher, who said to me once, I want to be like Galileo. I want to crack this, and people will know my name down the generation. I will crack this, I will have the answer. Well, he didn't. You know, he's gone completely mad in a way. And when they can't crack it, they can't get the answer, they can't get famous for giving the answer, they become very bitter, and they start to attack it. I don't understand, therefore it's man-made. It doesn't mean anything because I can't see any meaning in it. You see? And it's a most difficult subject to deal with. It's so difficult because people turn, they come in full of ideas, and then suddenly suspicion gets in, and wait a minute, and I don't understand that, and that doesn't, you know, and they get all very, very suspicious, and then they start to voice their suspicion. And the poor people who see the television and hear that, they think it's based on something solid.
Right.
It isn't.
So
Just
it
remember.
amplifies. It's an amplifier and a catalyst.
It's like any energy.
Yes.
It's like you go to do energy work, it will feed you. It will feed everything you bring to it. Be clear what you bring to it, because it can feed parts of yourself that doesn't need feeding. Right. See? But if you're not clear and you go there like an innocent and you soak it in, it feeds also imagination, paranoia, you know, and it's based on nothing. Stick to facts. Really stick to facts with crop circles. It takes a week to do by hand. If it takes a few hours at night, it's not done by hand. That's logical. That's based on something solid. I know what it takes them to do it. And they sweat buckets. It's difficult to do that. Hang on, have you were in line. You were in line first. Excuse me. Let's start.
My husband went to Wiltshire this summer.
Yeah.
Went into some of the formations, and it was a remarkable experience. It really was. But I wondered if you were familiar. There was one formation that we went into that was evidently made by some German researchers, not as a hoax.
Oh, yes.
But
Yes.
trying to communicate
Yes.
with the circle makers.
Yes.
And I
Yes, these researchers have been doing things like that for some years. It is an aspect that I find quite difficult as well to deal with, because I just feel that we're sent a communication now. I mean, you've seen the slides. It communicates truth. So we're being sent communication that we really desperately need for the next level. We need that in the new cycle, because the way we're going now, we're going straight to a brick wall, you know? We're going straight to an iceberg. We need to change direction. So we're receiving a transmission from a very high order. There are people who don't want to, that's going on. They want to speak to the higher levels. You know? I'm sending you a message, you reply. Imagine if everyone did that. We don't have time to do that. We must learn to listen and try and understand. So although they are not faking, although they are not hoaxing, they're really muddying the issues. It's like a side show going on there, you know? And last year, they claimed having done something, and I spoke to the farmer. I know the farmer very, very well. They pay the farmer, they rent his field, and they do that, and they're left in peace. It takes them a while to do it. It's not quick. But it confuses the issue. It really does. It's a real pain, and not everybody knows they've done it, and it is bona fide. Of course, the farmer is paid and everything, but I do find that it's a sideshow that's very irritating. And I don't agree with that. I feel we need to listen, you know. We're so arrogant. It's amazing, you know. I've got it. You listen to me, you know. This is my message, and if you don't answer to my message, then it's not real, you know. I mean, we're playing. We're playing. We need to grow up. We're childish. We're childish people. I really feel that. Look at what we're doing to the world. It's childish.
Right.
It's not the way to solve problems. Now, you were...
It's true. These images, these beautiful images, should be on the front page of all the newspapers in the world for everyone to contemplate and learn from these ancient, complex, exquisite symbols. But they're not, and fear is driving it, or maybe something even darker beyond that. I don't know. But the paradigm is being cracked little by little, the old paradigm of the materialist. 2 weeks ago, on the spur of the moment, I flew to Virginia Beach to attend the most marvelous conference of 3.5 days called The Physics of Consciousness. If you've seen What the Bleep Do We Know, well, Fred Alan Wolf was there and a couple other. It was like 2.5 days of What the Bleep Do We Know, where the physicists, all there, have for decades. They're noble souls who know it's not just the Maya world of material matter. It's much more subtle than that.
Yes.
So we had people like
conscious.
Yes, consciousness. It's all consciousness.
It's consciousness.
Peter Russell, Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, Fred Alan Wolf, Larry Dawsey, MD, and what they're all saying, the universe, when they were asked in the panel the last day, what is matter? What is? It's all vibration, just what Francine was saying. It's vibration. And then non-locality.
Yeah.
If an electron or a positron can be in 2 places at least at the same time, then our consciousness too can attune and effortlessly.
It responds.
It responds.
When they do experiments at that level, it gives you what you want.
Little by little, that with brave souls, like this lady with us today, and some of these physicists, the old paradigm is being cracked.
Yes.
For those who listen.
Quantum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the universe is quantum.
That's right.
The universe is a manifestation of consciousness
Yes.
in absolutely every level and in everything, even at this level of a quark. It's a manifestation of consciousness. And that's what the ancient understood. You see how different it is from our way of thinking. We're very ensconced deeply into materialistic way of thinking. And the materialistic way of thinking is, if it's dead, it doesn't matter what we do to it. There's no consequences. The earth is dead. Who cares what we do to it? The air is dead. Let's pour as much petrol as we can. That's not dead. And this is where we go wrong. We have to reconnect with this understanding that it's all living in consciousness. And that's what the crop circle do. They actually take you straight into the old sides. You've experienced that. You can't avoid the sides. You absolutely cannot avoid to interact. So all this knowledge is coming through. That's why I find very distasteful that people go about and systematically debunk, you know, especially the researchers. Now, the researchers, in 1991, we had Doug and Dave. We also had, I know it's foremost in the mind of people. I'm just trying to think, use your logic, and you'll see that it's not tenable. It's not tenable, that theory. It's a theory, and it's not tenable. And it's coming from fear. As you said, you're absolutely right. Right up to 1991, the people who were studying this, Colin Andrews and Dr. Meaden and, you know, these early, we call them early researchers, they had one aim, and the aim was noble. They were trying to understand what it was, and they were trying to crack the mystery and actually solve it once and for all. A lot of those called it a problem. We will solve the problem of crop circles. It just shows you the mentality, you see. And so the theory that was in favor then was the vortex, what's it called, the wind vortex. It wasn't called the plasma vortex, which actually is a way of saying that it is it's a current of air wind. And the idea was that the wind's coming along, it hits an obstacle such as a hill, and creates a vortex which makes a crop circle. Well, a simple crop circle, you can go quite far with this, but very, very, very early on, it showed signs of actually responding. And poor old Dr. Meaden would write these lovely papers with lots of wonderful drawings and also, you know, lots and lots of equation and say da, 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 and it can only go clockwise because that's how the vortex work in the northern hemisphere, and immediately he publishes paper, it starts to go anti-clockwise. You see, it is conscious, it is interacts, it plays, it will play with you, it will interact with you, and then he changes his theory and writes another paper and so on, and it went on and on and on. He explained straight path, he explained rectangles with all his theory of the plasma vortex. But when the Barbary Castle of the, you know, the one I showed you this morning, which I said I had to leave London because it was a mind, body, spirit. In fact, I think we could put it on a minute. He went in there and he tried to prove it with the wind. Can you believe this? He's breaking his head with the equation, number equation, and finally he said, it's not the wind. So it was the death of the wind theory. We called it the wind theory. They called it the plasma vortex, but we just said the wind theory. It was the death of the wind theory. And he came out of there, and I actually knew him then. I met him, although I don't think he would remember me, but I remember him. And he came out of the circle with his knuckles white. He came out. If it's not the wind, it's man-made. Well, why would it be man-made? Well, they're trying to trip me up. They're trying to make me look ridiculous. You know, they're trying to isn't that fair? Isn't that ego? And that was the beginning, that formation was the beginning of the hoaxing theory, and it was invented by the researchers. And it's the researchers that push it. It is always the researchers. They can't crack it. They don't understand symbols. They're there. You know, it must be, and they're looking over their shoulders, they're trying to laugh at me. People say that to me. Why do you think you're publishing a calendar? The hoaxers must be laughing at you because you forget, you know, it's nonsense.
Why is it that about 2 years ago, Colin Andrews was on this kick where most of them were fake? I don't, you know, I've seen the video of it and so forth.
Well, this is what I've just explained. They were tripped up, you see. He was on television. 1991, there was a deliberate attempt to demolish this thing. And he was actually at the height of his popularity. And he'd written a book, the first book.
What's his background?
He's an electrician.
Oh.
Yeah. 1 year when he came with his 80-20, and the BBC, the main chain of television in England, they did a huge thing with him. He was on television, was on the radio, he was on everything, you know, 80-20, blah, blah, blah. And another chain of television rang me and said, Dr. Andrew, the physicist, the American physicist is coming. I said, wait a minute. I said, wait a minute. There's 3 things that's wrong with your statement. He's not a doctor, he's not a physicist, and he's not American.
That's right.
What else did he say? What else did he say? He can't tell the truth about himself. You see? He's a little electrician from Andover. He's not a physicist. He's not a physicist. He spoke in New York in a little basement, 2 blocks from the United Nations. Now he says, I have been called to speak to the United Nations about crop circle. The man has no grip on reality anymore. So he just says anything that will actually put him in the papers, put him on the television. And when I was speaking to that television there, he was, you know, he was in the area, he was actually there physically, and I saw him go and hide behind a fence. You won't face me.
Oh, I bet not.
You won't face me. And this is all imagination. It's all bruised ego, dissatisfied, angry, bitter. Other people get the, you know, other people get the limelight, and he's no longer in the limelight. He tries to be in the limelight. He's got to say something that's outrageous. He can't back it up. There's no backing up. We have to go back beyond the subject of man-made now, because that's it. I can only tell you that. The researchers are, it's always an assumption.
Right.
It's always an assumption.
I would like to know, are you compiling what you have perceived, what you felt from these into, and reading the symbols, like you were saying, because there's multi-layers.
Yes.
And they go back to all these indigenous cultures.
Yeah.
And of course, these indigenous cultures also speak to the cosmology of
They
the
do.
stars.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, you know, since you're doing so much work with this, if you're compiling your knowledge.
Well, up to a degree. I mean, I've been 6 years writing a book now, and you know, and now I'm thinking, I was very depressed at first because it was taking so long, and now I'm thinking, thank goodness I didn't bring it out 4 years ago, because I didn't understand, you know, I didn't have the understanding, and I don't have the you cannot do that. It would take 26,000 years, I tell you, because it is complete. Every symbol is complete. All I can do is, in my book, and I will attempt to do that, to put the lines of symbols. I will put them in lines of symbols and say, these are the lines, this refers to that knowledge. I can't possibly give you that knowledge because I don't have it. I mean, these are lifetimes of study.
I mean, I want for myself, you know, these are so beautiful.
Yeah.
They're so
Yeah.
magnificent.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on it, and I'm hoping that in 6 months it will be done.
But even if you just did the questions that it's raising in you, that would be very valuable.
Well, I do, but how can, yes, of course, but I'm trying to sort of say the scope of it is so immense. There's not a human being on the planet who can do that. You know, you go and see an indigenous person, he will tell you his knowledge, which is the Mayan knowledge. Now, the Mayan knowledge is on Tuesday, on Wednesday is the Kabbalah, and on Thursday it's, you know, how can you possibly do this? These are just doors that are being thrown open. It's up to us to walk through the door. You know, I can show you the doors, I can tell you the scope, I can intimate, and I can show you how it's evolving in crop circle, how it's passing the knowledge. It will take generations to actually understand it.
There was a slide that you had on one of the crop circles that raised a question in me, and I was wondering if you could answer specific questions on some of the.
And which one was that?
It was where it had the chakras lined, but like the lower ones seemed to be lined to one point, and the higher ones seemed to be aligned to another
Yes,
point.
yes.
And it created a little confusion in me, and I was wondering if I could hear your take.
That is very interesting, but the ancient temples were built like that, and so are the cathedrals.
That the
Yeah,
lowers
yeah.
are at one.
Yeah, yeah, there is. And I didn't know that until this summer. And if you look at Schwaller de Lubitsch, for example, the sacred science, you will see the temple of man, and it is like this. And so are the cathedral, they are like that. And I don't know why it is like that, but it is. It's an ancient orientation when you.
The lower chakras are fed by earth energy, and the higher chakras are fed by spiritual energy.
Yes.
They come from different directions.
Yes, that probably is what explains it. But mathematically, there is a special geometry for that. And it fell straight into that geometry. And that was interesting, because I've had people saying, well, it's not straight, it's man-made. You see, it's all based on ignorance. When you're ignorant, you can dismiss everything. It's easy to dismiss things. You don't know anything. Colin Andrew is deeply ignorant. He's a deeply ignorant man. He really is. It's true. He is. He is. You just have to scratch the surface. He knows nothing.
Okay.
He doesn't know
Well,
anything.
it was so disturbing to see that. It was terrible.
Well, it's demolished it in thousands of people.
Could you discuss your understanding and history of the spiral?
History of the spiral.
Your understanding of it, where it fits.
Which spiral? Any spiral. The spiral. I'll show you. There is a formation that talks about this exactly. And if I can find it. In a minute. No, it's before that, isn't it? Which is. Aren't they amazing?
I want to see them.
There we are. That's the spiral. Okay, so you have the universe, which is a circle. You go down in scale. So you take, have I got, is there a pointer here? No, no pointers. This is half of that. That is half of that.
Oh, yeah.
That is half of that.
Yes.
That is half of that. That is half of that. So you go down like this.
Oh, okay.
So if you look from the top, so you have the universe. When the universe comes into matter, it goes down. First of all, it creates Vesica-Pisces, but it goes down in scale. And as it goes down in scale, it produces a spiral.
Right.
Yes.
Like this, okay? So you go from the highest to, you go down in scales, reducing half, 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 half. And then you start increasing. So you create this, which is the DNA, which is time. That's what time is. See? I had a discussion with my son. My son was about 16 then, and we're a strange family, not a normal family.
Where are you from?
I'm from Montreal,
Montreal.
but I was in England, and my son came back from school and he said, we had a discussion today, and I tell you, I have a great big problem to understanding the concept of eternity. And I said, you know, having his cup of tea, and I said, yeah, that's quite difficult. It's quite a difficult one. So I just can't I just can't grasp it. And I said, well, it is very, very difficult. And I said, what I find very, very difficult is the understanding that, because we were very much into fractals then. And fractals has the property, that's a fractal. So it's a property of expanding to infinity. No, it's a property of going down or up to infinity without taking any more space. So I said, that is, to me, the very, very, very difficult thing to understand. He said, that's easy. I'll show you. And he goes like that. One step, half a 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 step. And then you go up to infinity. You don't take any more space. And that was it. That's when this formation appeared. And he said that to me, and I went, that's it. That's it. Do you see? And that's the spiral. So you go down to infinity, and then you go up and down. So you have that breathing. So there's the breathing of the universe, creates a spiral, it creates time, its expansion, contraction, goes down to infinity, creates this. And everything is based on that. The ancient knowledge is the understanding of breath. That everything is breathing. So that is breathing. What we see is the universe in action creates time and creates the spiral. Spiral is time. And cycles is on time as well. It's very simple. Very ancient knowledge is very simple. Yeah?
This is very mundane, slightly different topic, but I wondered about plants, the farmers who have these things appear. Are those plants usable?
Yes.
Grain crops, and has anyone followed who is consuming this grain to see if there's...
No, we haven't followed that. It would be very nice you know, I get questions like that. Has anybody put a book that would tell you all the meaning of all the symbols? Well, no, actually. Well, has anybody, you know, that questions of the sort? We are people without any money, volunteers who do it for, if it's done, well, we do it for all sorts of reasons. As I said, some people go there to get fame. Some people go there to become famous, make money, be a big name, turning into the Galileo of his time and so on. Others go there because of their love for humanity and because they want to understand and they feel responsible and having to show the world what is going on. And we work like devils and we have no money and no support. And not only that, but we're boycotted from every direction and so on. So we can't do these kinds of things. I'm actually going to turn our group now into a trust, and I want to be able to be in a position to raise money to do these experiments. You know, if we're a trust, we can just send money and say people would like to experiments on the seeds, because we are collecting seeds at the moment, but we need money. It needs money. It needs to be done properly. You know, we need to have people who will be in charge of that, who will follow the research. We're stretched in every direction. We're trying to be jack of all trades, and we haven't got time. It's a huge, huge undertaking, you know. But the plants, there is a tape you can get here that the speaker 2 years ago, Percapel, Mr. Percapel spoke here, and he did the research here in the States, and they are still selling it downstairs, I believe. I think you can get a copy. I certainly want to buy some more. He will tell you all about this research. It's very, very, very interesting.
I mean,
very interesting.
Nothing is ever wasted, and there's such intentionality with this. What if the grain that's being consumed is another way of shifting the consciousness?
It is.
of people?
It is. It is like that. And we do collect it, and we make grass, wheat grass, and we drink it, and we eat the plant. Every person who researched this, automatically you go information, you eat it. But we have started to collect it, but we are not, you know, we're not a university. There's no such thing. There's nothing that is there to support that kind of research. So we're something that we want to try and do. But do get that tape. You'll find it very interesting. Yeah.
I was going to say, like in England, an awful lot of these crop circles are around the different sacred sites and everything. But I found the ones in Canada are starting to, like, I find them very fascinating because they don't really look like they're around sacred sites. They're kind of out there.
But we don't know where the sacred sites were. They're on the sacred sites of the Aboriginal, you know, of the indigenous people. I mean, here in England, in America, I mean, you had one right by the serpent, for example, Ohio serpent, and in Canada they had one on an Indian reservation near Toronto, so they would know where the sacred site is. And there was a nice circle on a lake in Quebec. And I know for certain that's where two big lines of energies are. The ancient, you know, the Indian understanding of the lines of energies were absolutely right bang there at that point that happened. So it will be, if you do research, you'll probably find that it is on very powerful lines of energies. But, you know, the Aboriginal people didn't leave great big monuments of stone and so on, usually, but they would know. It is usually very ancient.
And if you have a chance to get Michael Cremo's Forbidden Archaeology, way before Aborigine people,
Yeah.
there are traces of intelligent humankind that are some anthropologists who were told to shut up, discovered on the planet, and sophisticated tools and brain cases like ours that are very, very ancient. Then the earth changed, there were catastrophes, but perhaps there are traces in Canada of certain very, very ancient sites. Michael Cremo.
The dowsers, if you go dowsing, you can find the ley lines and so forth.
There are ley lines everywhere, you see, then a crossing of ley lines everywhere. And Canada doesn't have many ancient monuments from the ancient cultures.
So when I'm looking at these, the ones in Saskatchewan and Alberta and everything, so they're probably done on just the ley lines then.
But that's where the ancient, if the ancient hadn't done the stone circle, we wouldn't know, you see. Or if it had been destroyed. But I think that the Amérindians in Canada didn't have big monuments. And I'm not sure that they did here either. It would be something that didn't really impose on the earth so strongly. I think that the Ohio serpent is older. It's something that the tribes have inherited here. It's much older than them. They don't know where it's come from. They don't claim it, you know. It's same with Avebury and Stonehenge. The Celtic people inherited it. They don't know where it's come from. They don't know. Newgrange. They don't know. They say they're done by the giants. Whether they were giants in their understanding or giant in their physics, I don't know. But in Wiltshire, they'll tell you that it is the ancient people of Cana. Yeah, we have a town called Old Cana.
Here among the tribes here as well, like in the south and places too, where there are mounds. And I think in some places in the Midwest there are mounds. And some of the native tribes have legends of these giants as well as being some of the mound.
That it was done before their time.
They found huge bones
Yeah,
that would measure.
but now say I understand the mountains, but I'm talking about the period. There's the last crop circles in the end of August, September were found in, and I think one of them is, they're called elephant corn, which means the stalks are like this big.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when the stalks went down, and the corn is 8 to 10 feet tall, so you can't see it. And even as you walk into the field, you can't see it. You literally had to have an airplane.
Yeah.
And so I think there was only 2 of these found because they were found accidentally.
Yes.
Because there was no way to see in through the
Yeah,
corn.
it doesn't
You
mean
walk through the corn.
an ancient site is simply a crossing of ley lines, of energy lines, dragon lines they were called. And when the ancient people, they deliberately built their temples right there. But it doesn't mean that these lines don't exist in Saskatchewan just because there isn't an ancient structure on it. That's what I'm saying. It could be that the tribes had done a medicine wheel there, but it's been brushed away. We don't know, you see. There are these lines crisscross the whole planet.
Okay, I hadn't thought about it.
And in the 80s, there were some experiments done with dowsing, but also with machinery where people actually, I'm told by dowsers in England that, and some people have been dowsing for 50 years, and they tell me that the lines of energies were about 50 feet across, you know, like a river. And now they're like gulfs. They're 500 feet across. You know. They're like great big, yes. And that is growing, and it's growing. It's been measured in the 80s and the 90s, early 90s, that when a crop circle comes, the line of energy is depleted. So it seems that they need that energy to manifest. Somehow it's like they need to plug themselves into a plug. It has to go into a plug of current because they've measured the energy and the lines. We know they always come in the same place in England. So if you measure the line of energy in Eastfield and it's 500 feet across, and then you measure it after a crop circle and it's retracted to 50, you know that the energy is being used. But then it comes back. But it's like they need that boost of energy to manifest. So that's been done with machinery and so on, and it was quite a strong study. So they do need to connect with these lines of energy.
I wonder sometimes, you know, my imagination, I mean, I have no science background, but sometimes it seems to me when I look at these symbols and I think about where they're manifesting and with what you just said, that in a way there may be some kind of radionic healing of the earth in some way, that these are, because they're interfaced with our consciousness.
Yes.
And I don't know, something in my imagination, intuition has long wondered if there isn't some sort of radionics being applied to the planet.
Well, that was my first impression when I discovered them in '87. I thought that something is coming to replenish the planet, and that we're just bystanders. It wasn't addressed to us. It's a sort of, by the by. They're taking in a notice, so we'll give them some knowledge at the same time. So that it does feed the lines of energy, and more and more and more. And it feeds the soil, because the farmers, they grumble, they complain, but they don't know anything about it. Well, their land becomes more fertile if they get lots of crop circles there.
So it's like as above, so below.
Yeah. It is. This is an interaction of consciousness. There's a lot of... I know someone who is very strong in dowsing, and she says the lines of energies are lines of consciousness in the earth. you know. And that's why the ancient would make their temples at these spots. And you go into these temples, you go into the pyramid, you go into the great cathedrals, which are all built on ancient, you know, stone circles and so on. And you go in there and you get fed. You get fed, you know. And that's why they chose their places. It's because they're in an energy that's propitious to open up and to feed the mind and to feed the spirit and to elevate the spirit, you know. You go into cathedral, your spirit is elevated immediately. And they wouldn't choose any old place to do that. They had to choose the place that in the earth had that kind of energy, you see. They knew.
Would you show us that slide of the ley lines on the earth again, just
Yeah.
to kind of refresh
Yes.
where these...
But there are many, many lines. These are two major lines, but there are many, many lines, and it does all sorts of geometric patterns. It actually connects all the ancient sites. I have another slide. I didn't use it, but all the ancient sites are connected, and it creates, you know, it creates pattern on the earth. So it is amazing. It's a grid. It's like a grid.
Yeah, but we know a mathematician who was also a healer in Washington, D.C., and, you know, Jennifer's friend. And he is doing this right now. He's also a computer whiz. So he is feeding all of this data and trying to, you know, come
Find
up
the grids.
with, and he said it's so infinite. He's not done yet. And,
Yeah, yeah.
and I said, well, you know, obviously you're going to try to extrapolate some patterns. And he said, well, I already am, but there's so much that it's just going and going and going. So
The earth is like our body. You know, I saw a program recently, a couple of weeks ago in England, where people have been doing some they're boring into the earth, and they said that the deeper they go, the more alive it is. The more alive is full of bacteria. It's like us. There are not so many bacteria on the top. You go in, you find all sorts of things going on. Same with the earth. They go in, and it's full of life in form of bacteria. Absolutely full of life. And what do they think? Well, we better go down there and start extracting this, that, and the other, and we'll, you know, if we can only do this, and we'll extract all that, you know. Immediately we think of boring into a planet and using it, but it shows a life of the planet, you see. And so the planet is like us. It's got arteries, and it's got little veins, and it's got everything. It's not like us. It's got a nervous system and all the rest of it. So we can feel that. It's like the acupuncture of the... And the ancient put their needles right in the acupunctural point, and they put a temple there.
yeah.
See?
Well, the Native Americans have a beautiful metaphor for that, in that, you know, when you live in harmony with everything and being alive, that then when you have evolved to the point where, you know, you become a star and a planet in your own right, and everything lives off of you, because you realize that that's just the continuation of the life form. And I thought that's so beautiful, you know, that they talk to their ancestors in the stars, you know, that they have that knowledge, and I thought that's so
The Egyptian also had it, because all their life was the pharaohs. All their life was to prepare themselves to go and build a house in their father's you know, land in the sky, on the shore of the Nile in the sky. So they really felt that their soul would actually go into, and actually, you know, in the pyramid, these little shafts point directly to the Orion star nursery. So they would send their souls straight to the, you know, they're like the grain of a soul, or their soul was like a grain of a star, the seed of a star. And they would seed in the Orion. It is absolutely amazing knowledge.
And you know something else that fascinates me here is that you people who are from Arizona here have, I once saw a write-up in Nexus magazine about 10 years ago when I was living in Santa Fe, and I couldn't believe it, but there was a 10-page article in the Phoenix Sun newspaper in 1909. There was an expedition from the Smithsonian University with lots and lots of people that went to the northeast section of the Grand Canyon, and there's all of this
Wow.
Petersburg, they found an Egyptian civilization there for all
Wow.
practical purposes.
Really?
And it's been suppressed.
Do you have a copy of that article?
Yeah, we'll speak. I'd like to get some of your resources. Anybody else who hasn't spoken or participated would like to say something?
What does the numbers mean?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what they mean. Anybody want to say something who hasn't?
I'm wondering, the intersection there by two, is that around Peru or Chile or
Yes, two is Cusco, I think.
Cusco?
Yes.
Oh, I was just there. And what is four? The intersection on the other side?
Oh, that's off India, isn't it? It's an island of, I don't know. I don't know exactly where they are. But 8 is Japan, isn't it? 8 is Mount Fuji. 1 is Avebury. You can get maps where it actually shows all the very, very ancient and they all link together, you know. This is a very rough thing, but it just shows the current that it creates, like a DNA and a serpent and so on, and it just lands on very ancient sites that have worldwide importance. This is the chakra. It shows the chakra there. This is about the chakra, but my knowledge on this is not as profound as I would like to be, but they say that our heart chakra is in Avebury in England. Or
There's a vibrational energy that moves through these lines.
well, the earth is full of channels of energy. It's got, you know, veins and arteries, and there are lots of lines, many lines of energies. Where the ancient built the great temples was, they didn't build their great temples on the little veins. They built them on the big arteries, you know, and particularly when you get the north, south, east, west. Now, Avebury has north, south, east, west, bang, and right in the middle is the serpent temple that I showed you. So that is, in fact, I will. You see? So here you have north-south goes through Silbury that way, and east-west goes like that. And you have the two lines of energy. You've got the Mary and Michael that go west, and if you go into the little church, if ever you go to Avebury, you go to the little church, and you'll see the baptismal font that actually shows two great serpents coiled around it, and I mean, that is really pre-Christian understanding. It's right bang on the spot where it happens. It is the most, the baptismal font, and you've got around it, you've got the two serpents. They've got serpent with wings, so they're more like dragons, and they meet there, and that's where the big crossing is, because they always build their churches on the most sacred spot when they took over a religion, you know, because that's where people went. So they built a new church, and the people carried on going there because the site is so sacred. And that is where they build it, at the point of the two. And I'm amused to see that, because the dragon and the serpent were demonized, but it is in the church because it's very, very old, a very old spot.
Weren't they Druid? Wasn't that a Druid location that the Druids actually gave to the site to the first Christian church, and then they betrayed them?
The Druids did not build Avebury. It's not Druid knowledge, it's much, much older. They inherited it. They didn't actually, what happened with the Druids is when the new religion came, they formed a Celtic church. And the Celtic church, because they felt that the teaching of Jesus was not fitted in absolutely perfectly and enhanced it, and they just embraced it very immediately. And then, so it went on for several hundred years, actually. The Celtic church was very strong and was combined the Druidic Celtic knowledge with the Jesus knowledge. But when Rome took over, and they didn't want the Celtic, anything to do with Celtic, and they told them to drop all that, the Druids refused, and they were destroyed. You know, they were killed. In fact, they all went away to they had to escape, and they went to a holy land. It's called Holy Land, Holy. Wait a minute. It's not called Holy Land. Holyhead. Holyhead it's called now, but it's Holyhead. It's the furthest point you can go north if you go north of Wales. And they escaped the Romans for a couple of hundred years, and then the Romans caught up with them and massacred absolutely everybody. Everyone who had that knowledge was killed. There's very little knowledge left. We can only get it from the monuments themselves. There's no tradition that have survived that time. And that was done by the Romans, Catholic.
Yes, Glendalough is a good example of the overlap, because the priory there was built by, near Queen Maeve's settlement, her winter settlement.
Right. Well, it was the Celtic Church was very successful. There was no disharmony. It's the Roman Empire. You know, when the Roman Empire lost their power, they lost their military power because Christian religion was becoming so strong that they decided that if you can't beat them, join them. So they appropriated the religion and made that their instrument of control and power. But they still had their armies, and the armies destroyed the people who were, you know, trying to resist. And they sent the Roman army to kill all the Druids. All the people of knowledge were killed. There's no knowledge left.
Now, speaking of knowledge, if we can't walk in a, you mentioned, which really impressed me this morning, you go into a crop circle,
Yeah.
you receive that impression
Yeah.
into yourself, on a cellular level. Well, how would you advise us to receive knowledge if we can't walk into a crop circle?
Any knowledge, any energy, we talked about that before you arrived. It is that kind of energy feeds. It's very powerful. It is the energy that's created the universe. It's the energy that keeps the universe going. It's the most amazingly powerful thing there is. So it will feed you, it feeds. That's what it does. It will give you everything you want. You need to know what you want. It's like you're talking about the scientists. You do an experiment at a certain level, the level of energy, what they call it, quark, I don't know what they call it a scientific name, but it will always give you what you want. If they go with an idea of how the experiment will end up, it will always end up like this, because the universe is bending over backwards to give us what we want. So that's why we have to be very careful. We have to be very careful what we bring to that kind of energy. It's the same in healing. You know, you get people who go completely bananas with healing, who become big egos and all the rest of it. We have in England, I'm sure you have here. It can feed your ego. It can feed all sorts of things. So first of all, you need to be clear what you need, what you want, and you go there. The best way to go is like children. You don't want anything. You just go there open and you receive and you listen. And it'll give you anything that you need. It will feed what needs feeding. It will feed your understanding. See? It will feed your knowledge. You'll gain knowledge automatically. If you don't seek it, it will be given to you. If you seek it and you want to have it, you get resentful and then you will come to harm. It's a dangerous thing to interact with. You have to go with knowledge, actually. Without knowledge, you're in danger. You have to know why you're going there. Go like a child. Don't want anything. Don't demand anything. Just receive and listen. And then it's full of wonder. Brings nothing but wonder. Easy to say.
What is meant by Gaia or Mother Earth? I don't really understand that.
Well, we come from the earth. We don't come from anywhere else. You know, we eat of the earth. So all our substance is from what we eat. Everything comes from the earth. It cannot come from anywhere else. So it's been mined or it's been grown or whatever. It flows. We drink the water. We eat the food. So that's the substance of the earth, because the plants feed off they feed off the minerals that are in the earth and so on and so forth. So we also have the same DNA as the earth. The earth has a DNA. And it's the same as ours, with slight variation. The plants have the same DNA, the animals have the same DNA. So we ingest everything from the earth. Everything, our physical substance is from the earth, totally. So that's like a mother. She's our mother, because without the earth, if the earth is a desert like the moon, then we can't live there. See, but it isn't. The earth is alive and produces food and produces animals and produces people. We actually are like the cells of the earth. In actual fact, the reason we don't realize that is that we've got legs and we can walk about. And we're mobile, so we think we're separate. We're not separate. I'm told that people who went to space, they have to have something that gives them the pulsation of the earth, or they die. We could not go and live on Mars unless you graft yourself on an indigenous form of life, because it's a different DNA and it's a different pulsation. We need that pulse. We are the Earth. We are the Earth.
It's not like there's a consciousness or an entity or something that's feminine or, I don't know.
Well, it's thought of as feminine because it gives birth to everything all the time. So that's a feminine principle. That's why it's always been seen as a she. Whereas the sun sends its rays to inseminate the planet. I mean, you can see the sun. I've seen that one. It's beautiful, actually. It sort of sends spurts of matter that creates the, the beautiful light in the north, aurora borealis. So this substance comes in and fertilizes the earth. The earth can't live without the sun, and the sun, there's no life without the sun's input. So the sun is therefore seen as a male being because of its nature, which is to inseminate the life on the planet. So that's a male energy, and the female energy is to give birth. So the earth is always giving birth to plants, giving birth to, everything is growing. So it's encouraging life. That's a female energy. That's how it's seen. And the ancients were very pragmatic. So they saw the earth as a goddess or as a being, as a goddess mother, or a higher level than us. We can't be disconnected from the earth. It's impossible. The only place we're disconnected is in here. We think we're disconnected. I get people saying to me, are you one of those who want to reconnect to nature? What are you talking about? We can't live outside nature. It's impossible. We are a cell of the earth. You can't take a cell from your body and say, well, now you're on your own, go and get on with it. It's part of the body. It's exactly like that. Exactly. And if I die, my cells can't carry on living. Imagine that, little cell wakes up in the cemetery. Oh my God, I'm on my own. We're never on our own. It's not possible. If we're alive, we're part of a living system. We can't live outside a living system. We're little cells, tiny little cells. We should remember that. It's very important to remember that.
Did we have any crop circles this summer that coordinated with, well, there was the Venus transit, but also like sun activity, when we had high sunspot activity?
I don't know.
Certain things that...
I don't know. It's so intense in Wiltshire. It's almost every day. Bing, bing, bing. So there's always something to correlate it with. It's just very, very intense. And I see that the intensity is because it's urgent. It's urgent. We can't afford not to listen, actually. Because left to our own devices, because we feel disconnected, because we feel it doesn't matter what we do, if you don't understand the principle of life, you can destroy life. If you think a planet is dead, is not a living entity, a living conscious entity, it doesn't matter what you do to it. Atomic bombs, chucking things in the sea, chucking things in the air, but she's suffering. And she's, it does matter. So we really need to change direction in our way of thinking.
On a practical point, if you're going to Avebury, the Red Lion Pub is a lovely spot.
Yes.
It's charming.
It is.
It's a huge thatch roof building. It's just gorgeous.
Well, it's beautiful. The village is beautiful. It's been built mostly with the stones from the temple.
The rooms are all different shapes. It's a fun place.
Yeah, no, it is. It is very, very nice. I was going to say something else about the fact that it is urgent that we change our way of thinking. We are the cells of the planet. If we think we're separate and we can just use the planet for our own benefit, we can do that. We can mine everything and use it for our own benefit. We're actually creating a system that's outside the planet, and a system that's endangering the planet. We're creating acidity and acidic rain and all the rest of it. It's very comparable to what happens to us when we get cancer. It's exactly the same thing. Because cancer is simply that the cell no longer wants to serve the body, but wants to go its own way and creates its own system. And it feeds off the body. It uses the blood, it uses the air in order to create a parallel system. And what happens is the body gets very ill, and eventually the host dies. And if we carry on like this is what we're doing to the planet. It's like the planet is very ill, And we are the one who's creating that illness, and we need to change our way of thinking rapidly. And crop circles give us all the knowledge that we need to change our way of thinking. It's a very transformative thing, you know. I mean, I've even heard it from a farmer. You see something very practical. Well, farmers are very practical. I heard a farmer say that. He told my husband. He didn't tell it to me. But he had lots and lots of crop circles in the 80s and 90s. And he hated them. And he resisted. And he was very angry, and, you know, with his guns and all this. And in the end, they stopped coming on his land. And a few years passed. And one day he met someone who knows my husband, and he told him the story, and he said, do you remember how I used to hate crop circles? And his friend said, well, yeah. He said, I hated them because I knew they were coming here to tell us we're maltreating the land. To tell us we're maltreating the land. And I knew they were coming to tell me that, and I didn't want to hear this because the change that I would have to go through, you know, changing the way of treating the land is so huge, and money and all the things that it involves, that he was trying to block it and turn against it. But he knew deep down that it had. So crop circles transform the way we see things. And when you start to interact with this, you can't go and chuck things in the river, and you can't go and put all sorts of chemicals in your animals and everything and spray poison on your food. You just can't do it. And we need to change to really realize we're doing something to living beings, you know, and we can't do that because we depend on this. And if we do that, we get ill. We suffer. We suffer. We reflect what goes on the earth. It's a symbiosis. We can't be separated.
Well, I'm wondering, you know, I mean, besides buying only organic food and supporting, like, how we spend our money, and obviously making ourselves as healthy as we can, and also voicing our protest against companies that are just raping this planet and sucking the lifeblood out with the fossil fuels and the whole bill. But, you know, I keep almost, you know, praying as well as using my intention and in my actions. But, you know, we are like really, it's like good against evil. I mean, the forces that have control of this planet are just murderous.
It's true, but you can't imagine how strong we are, how an awake person, how strong an awakened person is. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. We can't be manipulated, we see through, we stick to our path, we have intent. It's very strong. I mean, you know, when we had formations telling us about DNA since 1996, and then the big GMO, genetically modified food, came on the scene, and we had discussions like this in my group and so on, and people were saying, how can we little individual possibly stop something like that? Well, just don't buy into the system. And we did that en bloc, you know, and Monsanto's had to move out of England. They cannot come in. They cannot come in. And the government was for that. You know, the government, but there was such pressure on the government that the government put a little clause, and it said, we will allow you to come here as long as you're responsible for the consequences of your action. You know, if something goes wrong, you pay. And they closed shop. And they said, we're going to go where we appreciate it. And they took off for India and Africa. They cannot get in England. They cannot. And that is something we've experienced. We just simply turn to a different thing. You say, oh, I'm not interested in that. There's another system. This is it. And many people do that. They rest on the power, on the consent of the population.
Well, you know, many people here that I've talked to, unless they are really into health, they are totally unaware of these.
But this is it. This is knowledge, you see. This is why we need knowledge. This is giving us knowledge. Once you have knowledge, you can take action because you know what's going on. Ignorance is very easy to manipulate people who are ignorant because they haven't a clue. They just believe everything they're told. But when you are conscious, you are able to see through and to sense truth and to stick. You're able to be self-powerful. You have your own power. So you're not you can't be manipulated. That's why governments always keep people in ignorance, because it's easy to manipulate, you see. Government rests on the willingness of people, whether you like it or not. It has to rest on something. And if people don't know what's going on and they accept everything, then there's no change that is possible. You need to wake up, you need to have the knowledge, and then stand up and say, I'm making my own choice. You don't have to fight, you just have to turn your direction away. We didn't fight in England, we just all went organic, most people. And the supermarket had to sell organic food because they wouldn't get any people going in. So they provided organic food, and that's okay, you know. And so Monsanto had to leave. He could not break us.
Right.
It's amazing.
Sometimes I think that, you know, there aren't answers, there are only choices.
Yeah. Yeah. I've also experienced that in the Catholic faith. I hope I'm not insulting any Catholics here. But I was brought up in a very restrictive Catholic thing. And I was in a convent to study, you know. And at the age of 15, 16, we thought, it's so dogmatic and so restrictive that en bloc, you know, most people my generation thought, I can't be bothered with this, I'm going in that direction. And we just turned around, and in one generation it collapsed. Because we didn't fight them, we turned around and went to something else. And it just collapsed because you can shout and scream, but if your church is empty, it's not going to give you it's the same with the powers that be now. People have to change direction, apply it in the... My cousin gave me a very, very good quote recently. He said, when he was a student, his teacher said, the greatest sin of man is not to it's not to put his theories into practice.
Sins of omission.
You moan about GMO and you go in the supermarket and buy all sorts of things that's genetically modified. Put your theory in practice. And then they lose their power. The power rests on us. And if we're not there to give them the power, that's why they hate that kind of stuff, because they know it. They know it. The wind is changing. They don't want that to be known, because that gives us our power. You know, it gives us the knowledge, gives us the understanding, it changes the way we see things. When the powers that be always resent that, you see, because they know that if there's a different wind coming, it's going to go against them. They will lose their power. That's why they always try to break anything that's new that will give a bit of fresh air, you know, in the area.
In just that vein, at the Physics of Consciousness Conference, Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, former director of the Bevatron at UC California, Berkeley, was asked, what's the future of physics then? And she laughed. She had a wonderful sense of humor. And she's published papers on people like Schrodinger and Dirac, and I mean, things we've seen in our history of science, but I've never read. Anyway, she said, physics, materialist physics is going to blow up in their faces. And she just laughed. So the cracks are there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like trying to put a square post in a round hole. Literally, because the materialistic thinking is square, based on materiality, which is square. And then you're trying to put it in a living world, spiritual world, which is round. And you're going, it just doesn't go in.
Francine,
Yeah.
I wanted to offer for the people that might want to make note of a film which is traveling the country now, sort of in more artistic theaters. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know? Were you mentioning it?
What the what?
What the Bleep Do We Know? And it's a documentary film that takes, if you mentioned it before, then I'm apologetic because I was not privy to that, but it's like a documentary that goes into the physics of the quantum world. It looks at the microcosm and the macrocosm and the symbology between them, and then it sort of documents with an actress named Marty Matlin, her awakening into this awareness in her own life, and her attitudes and intentions that she takes into her life, create scenarios around her, which either limit her or open her. It's a fabulous film, and it's a number of different people, scientists, came together to kind of create this film. And they're also doing it with conferences. There's a conference going on in California I just learned about in, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. February. It's the middle of February, the end of February. And it's a conference around this film.
And where's that at?
I think it's going to be in Santa Barbara.
Santa Monica.
Santa Monica. Thank you, Santa Monica. So So if you go to, I think it's whatthebleep.com, you can go look that up on the
It-
internet, find out about it.
It's very interesting that science is coming. I once heard a scientist speak. It's Rupert Sheldrake, actually, and he said that science is always, that the population is always years and years behind science. So we are actually now in the mindset of the 18th century. You know, that's been applied with the cars and all that. That's a mindset of the 18th century, and that's where the population is. And the scientists, and this is the mindset that will be here in several centuries. So we're sort of 400 years behind. You know, the most popular books in England now is books about the discovery of America, the explorers in the 16th, 17th century. Yeah. Yeah, this is a fantastic, you know, that is very, very popular at the moment, and you write a book on that and you immediately get a publisher and so on, because the population is excited with that. It's safe. It's something known, you know, and I was talking to my husband, I said, but we're discovering the universe. But that won't be, but the humanity will get to this in 300 or 400 years. That will be the hot topic of the day.
Well, see, you have time to write your book.
Yeah, but we are way ahead of, you know, and science is just, another thing that scientists have said is that what they're just beginning to discover, they get to there and they see that the mystics have been sitting there for a long time. They're still sitting there. So they're coming from a different direction, but they're beginning to see the more subtle aspect. You know, they're going beyond the physical, and this is the thing, you know, there is, beyond the physical is actually where the physical comes from.
There's a mystic in this film. It's Brantha, A.J. Knight. She's a woman who's been channeling something like a 4,000-year-old, you know, spirit in
Yeah.
Brantha. She's written a number of books. Well, it's part of her students or people who have studied with her that took the impetus to create this film. So she's woven into it as well. I mean, they don't really, I knew who she was as soon as I saw her. They don't really go into it, but she's definitely a mystic.
Yeah.
And it sort of parallels what the mystics have been saying, what the scientists are now discovering, and then what you can discover in your own life by aligning and understanding the synchronicity of your life, paying attention.
What I find so fascinating with Crop Circle is that it links the two. It links very advanced knowledge. They find quantum physics and all that is very much, you know, in the Crop Circle. You'll hear a lot of it tomorrow, and geometry and all that. So, but also you have the ancient knowledge. So the two, they create a bridge. So you have the two currents coming together. And that is a means of transforming. And it's not just it's for everybody. You see, you don't have to go to a conference and be able to receive what a scientist does, because there are people who can't do that. But this is actually in the field. People can go in, they can receive the energy, they can explore. All that, it becomes almost like in an organic way. So it's bringing transformation of consciousness. And we need to transform our consciousness, because it's the only thing that can be transformed. But when that is transformed, everything will change. See? Everything, because if you have different consciousness, you create different things. So you create a different world. We couldn't create the world that we live in now with the consciousness that we have. That only had to be created from the people who were before us, and we've gone beyond their understanding. But we're getting their legacy. So we have to create the world according to our understanding, and that will be the future world. It is us who will create it. Only if our consciousness changes, though, you see? We'll create what we know. We create the world that we know. So it's always, the problem is we have to live with the consequence of the past generation, you see, and it's very difficult to change. So that's what I think. It is a transformative thing, the Crop Circle.
Well, I have to say one little thing. I've always found that the artists are always in advance of science and you know, with even in other areas as well, because they are working, they are tied in with because their job is creation and communication, and that is the senior particle flow. That's what all of this is. It's all communication.
Yes, it is.
And so artists, that is the job of artists.
Artists, it's true, but even scientists, I mean, Einstein always said that he's only ever discovered things when he let go.
Right.
When you stop hitting, but he just he lets go, and suddenly suddenly it comes. You see, so intuition.
You said intuition is more important than knowledge.
You access knowledge through no, I wouldn't say imagination. You access knowledge through intuition, I would think. I don't dismiss the reason, though. Reason is very, very important. It's very, very important to balance. You really need to ground it. Reason is to ground it in the physical. The problem is that in our civilization, we have used that as the end all, be all and end all, you know. What we see is what there is, and there's nothing else. But actually what we see is the end result of forces and principles that come behind it. So in order to access what you have behind it, you have to go through your higher levels of understanding, your intuition and so on. But you mustn't let go of the reason, because otherwise you'll get lost in imagination. Imagination can be quite dangerous, you know, because it can take you also. It has to be grounded, and that's why I like the crop circle so much, because it's actually grounded in the physical. You can't argue with it. You see, it's not like coming up with ideas. If you come up with ideas like this, people would say she's an absolute nutcase. See, she must go, but it's there. It's there. There's no argument. You can't argue that it is not happening, and you can't argue that it refers to certain symbols, and then the symbols mean certain things. There's no argument.
And we search for ways to apply them, obviously.
Well, that comes with, automatically we will apply these things once we get, you know, when you have an understanding about something, you can't go back. It's automatic. You know, I cannot put poison in a stream. I can't do it physically. I can't do that. So, because I have an understanding of what the stream is and all that. But if you're ignorant, you do all sorts of things in ignorance. You just don't understand. You have no concept of consequences if you're ignorant. Only if you have knowledge, you have an understanding of consequences. See, it's deep sleep is a very dangerous state to be in. And unfortunately, the whole Earth is in deep sleep. It's waking up. We're waking up. You know, there's some little twitches here and there, but the whole now is on a suicidal path, and we need to transform our formation. Okay, I was wondering how long we've got. 5 minutes? No,
it's 12 o'clock now, but if
yeah.
you want to, if anyone wants to stick around, or if you want to stick around.
No, I think it's been long enough. Yeah. Yes, the dates will be. No, unfortunately we can't. It's going to be in Marlborough, right by the Merlin Mound this year, and it will be 13th and 14th of August. Yeah. I've given you information pamphlets today on each of the chairs, and my address is there, and the email address is there, but we're sort of in the process of doing a website. I might put something on the website there. Usually I don't organize tours. I'm just the guide. So I'm employed by the tour operators to take people, and I usually give them a lecture as well, but I'm the guide. I don't organize the tour. So it's organized by other people, you see. Well, there is a Merlin book here that someone lent me. So you can buy books on Merlin and so on. I don't think there's a book that tells all these things, but there are lots of, have a look at the bookshops. Ask Chet, there's books on Merlin, there's books on white horses and so on, but it's easier to buy them in England. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I went back in the house, grabbed the book, and read about Merlin before coming this morning. So when you were talking about that,
Yeah.
was a synchronicity.
Yeah. Merlin is an ancient knowledge. Anyway, thank you very much for coming. Thank you. It's amazing all this knowledge is coming out though, you know.
Oh, it is. We live in interesting times.
We think it's very, very slow, but in actual fact, in 40 years, you know, the progress that have been made is incredible, isn't it?
It feels like rediscovery.
Yeah, it is
If we're
rediscovery.
going back
Yes.
to our origins.
It is. It is. The ancient knowledge is far higher.
And having squandered it in the beginning, it's not coming easily.
Well, that article.